Thankfully, when I got back to Canada, I found myself invited to a church that was called the Metropolitan Bible Church.
Right.
Yeah, and I was really intrigued as I went, and there was lots of young people there. And this was the really freaky thing. They actually all brought Bibles to church.
Wow.
And they wrote notes in the margins. I had never seen that before.
Yep. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Monday Movement podcast, where we have deep conversations with Christians who are called to the marketplace. I've got a very special and good friend who's joined us today. So Liz Henderson is the co-founder of Avodah Global, which manufactures garments in Cambodia and is a social enterprise where they not only produce garments of a high quality, but also they help. The team is made up of people who are at risk or have been trafficked. Liz Henderson, great to see you. Tell us about what you're doing in Cambodia. It sounds like an amazing thing you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a very gratifying thing that God's called Corrine, my business partner, and I to do. She's the one, I just want to say up front, that has 37 years plus in garment manufacturing and garment engineering. I do everything in the business that doesn't involve a sewing machine or a needle, but it is very gratifying. We bought a sewing center in the middle of COVID in a country we couldn't visit that had no customers. And that's a story in itself about how God laid that on our hearts. And if you want, I can share that with you. But let's get into that, because it's why would you do that? Is the obvious question. Yeah, well, why would we do that?
Yeah.
Indeed, yes. So my business partner Corrine had actually been involved in setting up this sewing center on behalf of a church charity. It was a church that she was fellowshipping in the 2015, 2016. And they had a ministry in Cambodia providing a safe haven, a home for young girls, primary school age up to 18, who had been trafficked or were at risk of trafficking. And the program at that time, back in 2016, had been running for a decade, and they had the first cohort of girls who had reached the end of high school, and they thought, we really should give them some sort of vocational training. And so the idea of creating a sewing center was born. And Corrine, because of her background in the industry, mainly from Melbourne, she's actually worked for every major Australian garment retail company that you can think of.
Okay.
She got involved and actually set it up and trained the original 7 staff. Fast forward to 2021, and the sewing center was really struggling in COVID. Corrine had left a few years prior. She was off doing her own thing. I actually met her in Cambodia. I just bought an e-commerce business, and I was over in Cambodia and in Vietnam doing a discovery tour, trying to find sewing centers that I could get my activewear manufactured in, having just bought this e-commerce maternity activewear business. I met her there, and I immediately asked her to be my production manager in my new fledgling company. So this was October, November 2019. None of us knew what was coming down the pipeline. So I went and visited this particular sewing center, never imagining that 18 months later, Corrine and I would actually be owning it. But fast forward to 2021, and as I said, the sewing center was struggling in COVID, and it was going to close down. That was the very difficult and sad decision that, unfortunately, the church charity had made. And we were quite distressed about it. Of course, she was distressed because she trained all the staff, and the original 7 were still there. I was distressed because I was hoping to move my activewear manufacturing to them. So maybe a bit selfishness on my part. Regardless, though, we thought, how can we possibly do this? And the more we pushed it aside and said, no, it's too big, we can't do that. We can't even get out of Australia. Once COVID had hit, it wouldn't leave us.
Yeah.
And we felt that God was saying, well, so what are you going to do about it?
Love it.
So effectively, we bought a failing sewing center in a country we couldn't visit in the middle of the pandemic that had no customers.
As you do. Apart from that, it was fine.
Apart from that, it was fine.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't go into 2021 thinking, oh, well, I'm going to spend all my savings buying an entity in another country. So that pretty much wiped out the budget. And so Corinne and I had to think creatively and innovatively with a lot of prayer about how we were now going to pay staff wages and what on earth were we going to get them to do, because it can take 3 or 4 months to onboard new garment manufacturing customers, because you got to make a sample and then they've got to approve it and then you've got to order all the fabric and then you got to make whatever the thing is. And so we did a GoFundMe campaign. And the theme of the campaign was the most expensive T-shirt you'll ever buy campaign. And essentially, if you gave us over 100 Australian dollars, we promised you that in some point in the vague future, like 3 or 4 months from that point then, we would send you a very plain looking T-shirt from Cambodia. Good quality, of course, made with love. And that was the start of our financing of our team. So we raised just under $16,000 that way. And it was just enough to pay wages, keep the sewing center ticking over until we could onboard real customers.
Yeah.
So that was the start of our journey.
I love that. I think in Christian circles, often this kind of enterprise where you're reaching out into third world countries and helping people transition in one way or another is often done with donor backing or church funded. You've gone down the social enterprise path, which I like, by the way. I think it's a great model. Was there a particular reason for that?
There were several reasons that we didn't choose to do the charity model. In fact, the entity that we bought had been set up as a charity. So we had to repurpose it and register it with the Cambodian government actually as a business. So two of the primary reasons were we wanted to be able to give our staff shares in the enterprise. And of course, it has to be a business structure to do that. Secondly, importing and exporting, if you are a charity, is very difficult. And the third thing was we wanted to be able to take investors on board. Now, that's not to say that we don't do donations as well. So we've got a very interesting model where we've partnered with Global Development Group around a specific charitable project.
Okay.
And what we find is vocational training, I should say, that's the project.
Okay.
And it's specifically garment engineering and garment technologies that we're doing the vocational training. And so it's very relevant to our industry and to our business. However, what we find is that women coming out of trafficking have very low education and limited sewing skills. And as a startup, we were pulling our trained people off the production line to train these people. And it was a huge cost to the commercial side of the business.
Right.
So being able to set up this training program that allowed us to take on ex-trafficking survivors with low skills, give them a training wage, and give them the actual training from qualified people at the same time meant that we were able to support them through their learning. And once they reached a level of competency, then there was a job waiting for them on the production line.
That's great.
So that's how we've set it up. So we appeal to both.
Yeah, that's good. So the sort of hybrid
Yes.
in that piece, just in getting people across, that's awesome. It must be very transformative to women who come into the organisation.
It is completely transformative. Over 80% of our workers came from below the poverty line prior to employment. And economically speaking, they say that direct beneficiaries, when you employ one person in a family, 5 or 6 others are directly benefiting economically from that employment situation.
Yeah.
What we find, though, is that it's not sufficient just to train in sewing competencies or provide a job. We actually need to help nurture them in the life skills that allow them to thrive at home and at work.
Yeah.
So we run a full training program even for our existing commercial workers how to manage their money. We even tell them how to set up a business, because some of them actually have dreams of setting up their own coffee shops and things. And while we want to hold our workers lightly with an open hand, if that's what they want to do, we want to be able to share that information with them.
Yeah, awesome. And is there a faith-based element in some of that training?
Oh, there certainly is.
Okay.
There certainly is. We are missional at heart. Okay. Our Corinne and I are longtime Jesus lovers, as is our entire board. And we believe that to truly transform people's lives, people need to meet Jesus. Yeah. So most of our workforce are Buddhist. We have a couple of Christians who work with us, but we use every opportunity to share the gospel. We've run alpha programs.
Yeah, great.
So I like to say our staff are on their Jesus journey.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. This is not something you've always done. It's probably not a left-hand turn, but it was quite a change for you. You've got a background in consulting to all sorts of different organizations. How did you feel about that transition? I can see how it evolved, but how did you sort of cope with that? God's kind of intervention in you think you're going down one track and you end up doing something else completely different.
I think over a number of years, the Lord was beginning to signal to me that he had something else for me. Okay. And I had a very powerful word that I would be involved in setting up places of refuge. And the more I prayed into that word, it was specifically for women who'd been rescued from trafficking. And I knew, because I'm called to business, that it would have a business element to it. And when you have those sorts of words, you receive them, but you kind of put them in your pocket, because if it's going to be, it's up to him, right?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so it really just evolved. And then suddenly this sewing center appeared in 2021. And as I said, the more we tried to put it down and say, we can't do that, the more it came back. Mm-hmm. And it became clear to me that it resonated with a word that I'd been given 2 years prior, that this is what he was calling to. And so, I didn't know how it was going to work. Yeah.
No choice then, is there?
No. You
Are you going to be obedient to what God's asked you to do or not?
You choose to be obedient. And and look, I struggle with that at times.
For sure.
Absolutely. I like to see the solution. Yep. And when every month we are praying and trusting God for the finances to meet payroll. Cash flow is a bit choppy. We've had to navigate currency fluctuations, all the freight and logistics issues that we've had that brought on by the COVID and Ukrainian war and so on. Yeah. And just managing startups in 2 different countries. Mm. And so the Lord knows.
Oh, walk in the park.
Yeah.
Lots going on. Can I I love what you're doing. I think it's just fantastic. I think it's great to be able to use the business skills that you've got in such an effective way. And I love the social enterprise model, because you still have to be commercial, and the quality's got to be right. You've got to work with excellence and integrity and connect with clients and do all that. But there's this social and faith-based outcomes that you get as well. It's just phenomenal. So good on you for doing that. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. Can I ask you about your own faith journey? Were you raised in a Christian environment, or how did you come to Christ?
I was raised in Canada in the Anglican Church, although I like to say what Derek Prince used to say, and that was he used to say, I know God is in the Anglican Church. It's just that he and I never met there. Right. And that was my story. Yeah. I didn't become a Christian until I was 23, and I was backpacking across Europe. And I think God showed me just who I was, and I didn't like what I saw, because I always figured as a nominal, I believed in God, but I didn't, he wasn't part of my life, that if God graded on the bell curve, that I was probably okay. Yep. And while I was backpacking through Denmark, I stayed with a Christian family, and they had a Bible on their bookshelf in English, and it was a college kind of version, a bit like Good News, but it wasn't Good News. And I was drawn to this book. And I just had this sense that if I asked this family who had just met, if I could borrow this book and take it with me, because our next stop was going to be Portugal, so that's like 52 hours on a train, that they were going to let me take it. And they said, you don't even have to send it back. You can keep it. So I sat on the train from Denmark, from Copenhagen down to Lisbon, and I read the Bible. And that's when I thought, oh my goodness, I'm really in trouble. When I got to 2 Peter, be holy as I'm holy. And I thought, okay.
Yeah, wow.
So then I spent the rest of my backpacking journey trying to be good.
Yeah.
And we all know how that would work out.
Not well.
Yeah, so I was good for about 24 hours and then, partying
You did well.
and whatever.
You did better than most of us.
Oh, look, I tried really hard.
Yeah.
And thankfully, when I got back to Canada, I found myself invited to a church that was called the Metropolitan Bible Church.
Right.
Yeah. And I was really intrigued because I went and there was lots of young people there. And this was the really freaky thing. They actually all brought Bibles to church.
Wow.
And they wrote notes in the margins. I had never seen that before.
Yep.
So I used to sit up in the galley at the top in the balcony, so I didn't have to connect or meet with anybody. But I went Sunday after Sunday, and one day I got there late, and all the room in the balcony was full. So I had to sit down in the main part of the auditorium, and I sat beside a lady who started chatting, and she said, "Oh, are you new? I haven't seen you sitting in this row before. I sat here for 10 years. Yeah. And I said, no, I've been coming for a bit, but I'm late. Yeah. And she said, oh, well, I need to introduce you to Mary in the choir or whatever, because she's in college and careers. And that was the last thing I wanted. I'm thinking, no.
Don't connect me.
Anyway, don't. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, we got connected. And Mary, it's all Mary's fault. Mary asked me on the phone when she called me, have I received Jesus as my personal savior? And I'd never heard that language before. And I stumbled with that one. And then I said, yes, yes, I have. And I now know that was the moment that I opened my heart to Jesus.
That's awesome.
Yeah, September 23rd, 1983.
That's great. I love that.
So, but that was just the start. I was on a fast track, and within 3 months, I was on a flight to Southern Africa, to Botswana, to serve the Lord in the middle of the Kalahari Desert as a baby Christian.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just...
I'll just leave this. I just drop that and leave that there.
Just go hardcore straight into the Kalahari.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was that for you?
That was fascinating. So it was 2 days along a sand trail. Literally the paved road ended. And I was in this remote village for 2 years that had no running water, no electricity, no telephones, and no hard ground. It was just deep sand everywhere. So coming from the city of Montreal, which at the time was about 3 million, as a 23-year-old into this remote village environment was pretty shocking. And I just made the decision that, when the Lord pulls the cultural rug from underneath your feet, you got to decide, are you going to keep standing or are you going to fall over? And I made the decision that in him I was going to keep standing. Yeah. But I was as I said, I was a baby Christian, and I remember praying through the Kalahari as we're going out to this village, Lord, I'm a baby Christian. Can you please ensure that one Christian crosses my path in the 2 years that I'm meant to be in this village? And I arrive at this school. It was a brand new community junior secondary school. When I say brand new, we didn't actually have a building. So the concept of the school was new. The building took another 2 years to arrive. Right. But we had fledgling staff. So we had 2 classes of Form 1s and we had 5 teachers. The headmaster was actually a Brit. He was a born-again Christian. There was Star, who was a national teacher. He was a born-again Christian. And then we had 2 high school leavers who were doing their, it's called national service. You've got to give a year to the country and help out in schools and in the health centers and so on before you go on to university. And we had 2 high school leavers doing that, and they were both born-again Christians. So we had a staff of 5, and every single one was Christian.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that was the start of my walk with Jesus.
Yeah. My mother did it the other way around. So her last thing that she did was running a fistula hospital in Sierra Leone.
Oh, wow.
So she had her African experience in her 70s. It's her idea of retiring. It's amazing what plans God has for us. I mean, to take you in that environment and just put you in somewhere like that would be challenging, and yet give you enough support and surrounding and start that journey. One of the things that we wrestle with here, because most of the people that listen to this are Christians who feel called to the marketplace, is God interested in our work? And if he is, how do we actually activate that in a way that makes sense? You spend a lot of time in the corporate environment as well as a consultant. What are your thoughts on that as far as the integration of your faith in your work? How did you manage that?
I don't see any disconnection between being in the marketplace and my faith. I know that God calls me to serve him in the marketplace, and particularly to serve him in business.
That's great.
And I see, as we look at the scriptures, it's all through the Gospels, particularly in Matthew, that Jesus goes into the marketplace and he heals all their diseases. He spent time in the marketplace revealing the Father through salvation, but also through physical healings.
Yeah.
So I think I have great comfort in that and in following him into the marketplace, because we got to go where people are.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think in Australia, all across the West now, we've lived, I think, on the fruits of the labor of our of previous generations, where church was part of culture and people would come to church. They're not coming to church now, and so I think it's even more imperative that we go to where they are, and that's in the workplace, that's in the marketplace, that's in the gym, that's in on the sports field.
Absolutely.
I think we all have a part to play in sharing our faith in those domains.
Yeah. I think all Christians are in full-time ministry. Whatever he's created us to do, doing
Exactly.
that in
Do
under
that.
him.
Exactly.
And so my perspective of what God taught me even as an early Christian was to expect, his favor, his guidance. He was interested in everything that I did. There was no secular sacred divide. And if you put me in this particular company, it was for a reason. And that I should, seek him there, what he wants and what he's doing, and as part of a daily process. But then I started bumping into other Christians that sort of found that to be a bit of a foreign concept. That the workplace was almost a necessary evil. He kind of went in there to make some money to give it to the church, as opposed to actually minister there and be, expect God's favor in the midst of that. So your perspective is very much around he's called you to be called to business. How did that sort of go down for you in your consulting career? Secular environment, you don't want to spend all your time in front of HR. You've got commercial clients. How did you manage that?
I don't think it's easy at times, because you have to be very wise with your words. But we're called to share our faith, and I think, as St. Francis of Assisi is purported to have said, and sometimes with words. Yeah. So,
that's so good,
very
isn't it?
much how we live, how we conduct ourselves. I had an interesting experience recently in Cambodia with a Buddhist supplier who commented to us on how much high tax we'd be paying, because the products we were importing from Australia had such a high value. And he said, "Why don't you, write down the invoice? This is more than most people pay per value." But the price was the price, and we said that to him. No, we'll pay whatever tax we have to, because that's what we paid for this item that we're importing. So we're not going to dilly with that. But he actually made a comment through to our operations manager, because he said, "Oh, I haven't seen that. They're going to get good karma."
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to get blessings.
That's right.
But we're just, that's how we live. The world is watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think particularly people kind of know, and they are watching. I think evangelism is it's a fruit, not a process. I think if we're living that life and aware of what God's doing, we'll see the opportunities, or people will ask.
But also, how do we love people in those environments? And I found that as I build relationship with individuals, I find out when things are not going right or they're ill. And I just ask the Lord to bless me as I'm going to step out and say to them, hey, can I pray for you?
Yeah.
And I've laid hands on, leaders in Big Four consulting firms, and I've laid hands on people of other religions because they've had a physical disability or illness or something at the time. And I've seen God work.
Yeah, it's awesome. And people very rarely will say no when you offer to do that.
Yeah.
I haven't done it very much, to be honest. But when I have, no one's ever said no. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think we underestimate how open people are.
And I think we underestimate how willing the Lord is to actually move and show himself to people who don't know him.
Yeah. That's true. He's more interested in reaching those around us than we are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we need to be obedient, don't we, and available. I think if we're obedient and available, if we think about him during the day, that he's part of, there's an ongoing prayer walk. We'll walk into a meeting just praying, and that's part of our experience. Then we'll see the fruit, see the opportunities, and see what he's doing. Yeah, it's great. Do you have any sort of? You've been doing this for a while. Do you have any sort of words of wisdom for people that may be just a bit new to this, maybe younger people who are feeling called to become an entrepreneur or to go into business or do something in the professional marketplace as Christians, but a bit concerned about how that might work out? Any advice for them?
I think the first place to go is to the foot of the cross and in prayer and seek the Lord's will. He's a good dad, and he makes his will known to us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes time to sit at his feet and really listen before you get those pearls in that direction. But then when you hear it, don't discount it if it seems impossible. Thank him for it and know that he equips us with everything good for doing his will. And he's working in us that which is pleasing in his sight. So I think Christians can do extraordinary things when we're listening to the Lord and we're obedient to his call and trusting him for every decision.
That's right.
And look, I haven't always done that. Sometimes I have run off ahead of the Lord, and Isaiah, is it 5 or chapter 6 says, woe to those who hasten the work of the Lord. So that's my issue, is that I need to wait until the Holy Spirit's led into something. Because sometimes it's the right thing, but it's not the right time.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
But I think he's faithful. He's faithful to direct us if we step back and give up control.
Yeah. Which is hard to do, isn't it? Just to let go, lay things down, let him make those calls. It's not easy to do.
It's not easy.
Not easy. So what's next for Avodah Global? What have you got planned?
The vision we believe the Lord has laid on our hearts is to disrupt the global manufacturing model. And that's where you see, 1,000 workers crammed into an unsafe, unsanitary workplace, and they're making poor quality garments and paid a pittance. And so we're reforming that by creating small, family-friendly sewing hubs where workers are paid a living wage, they're making ethical and sustainable garments. We're actually a B Corp certified company.
Yep.
And each of those hubs is a place of learning and professional development. And they're supporting a number of outworkers, women who work from home, because the story of one of our workers is that they were groomed as a child because their mother was away from home, working long hours in an exploitive garment factory. So in this case, having the ability for women to work in manufacturing but do it from a home base where they can keep an eye on their young children is part of our model. And we're going to do that, God willing, not just in Cambodia, but set up those centers in India, Vietnam, and other places where trafficking is an issue. Poverty is the biggest driver of trafficking. Yeah. So if we can provide alternative employment, then I think we can deal a body blow to that exploitive industry.
Wonderful. I love that. I'm a rebel at heart, so I like this disruption of that kind of thing is fantastic. Liz, if people are more interested in finding out a bit more about your organisation, what's the best way for them to make contact?
I think the best way is probably by email. And my email address is liz@avodah, AVODAH, global.org.
Okay. And we'll put all those details in the subtext for people to be able to contact you. Liz, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for spending some time today, and God bless you in all your endeavours.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us at the Monday Movement Vodcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you want to know more about what we do, you can find us at mondaymovement.com.